Can you see that, gang? I can't hear you. I can't. I have to hear your voice. So can someone just tell
Yeah.
me? Okay, you should
Yeah.
see two guys, Samuel and Cameron, right?
Yeah.
Okay, as you can see, Samuel's a real snappy dresser. Yeah, okay. Samuel and Cameron are their actual names, but they always go by their nicknames of Sam and Cam. And they're good friends. Uh, and so one day, they're talking to each other because there was a big party the night before that Sam went to. Here's the aerial view of that party. And we have an aerial view because Cam, as his name suggests, he has a drone there. He didn't go to the party. He spent the time hanging out, chilling, and taking airborne pictures of the party to see what was going on. This is a party that Sam actually did attend. So they're talking about it, and Sam said, "What do you think of the party?" And Cam said, I enjoyed it, man, but I enjoyed it from before. This drone is awesome. It takes absolutely fantastic pictures. I was watching your sorry butt all night." And he goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You were wearing that terrible striped suit that you always wear. I could pick you out from a crowd really easily." And he goes, "You spent all your time around Waldo." And Sam says, "Who's Waldo?" He goes, "Ah, you mean where's Waldo?" Sam looks at him confused and he said, "Waldo, you know, the Where's Waldo things. By the way, in voice, do you guys remember this guy?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was hoping. I didn't think this was too ancient. I thought when you were kids, it'd still have this around. Well, Cam says there was this inflatable life-size Waldo at the party. You didn't see it, really? Sam says no. He goes, "I can't believe that. You were around this guy, around Waldo, like 80% of the time. And 80% of the time you were within 30 feet of Waldo. 50% of the time you were probably within 20 feet of Waldo." Sam says, "I never saw him." So let's take a look at the situation. There's what he said. You were within 30 feet of Waldo almost the whole night. I'd say 80% of the time you were, and half the time you were within 20 feet. Okay. Well, we're going to change this from a real life world to a cartoon world. So there's Sam, but I got another image for him here. Oh, by the way, here's Waldo in the time of social distancing. I thought that was rather amusing. It's fairly easy to find him here. So here we go. There's Sam. Here's Sam in the Waldo world with his terrible looking suit. By the way, I had to work to find this freaking picture of Sam over here. And so now we'll take a look at the party in the cartoon world. And here we go. Those of you who have known Where's Waldo, of course, know what's going on here. In the Waldo books, you have all these pictures, and your job is to find Waldo in the picture. You'll see people that are dressed kind of like Waldo, okay, and some skirts and stuff, but it's not exactly Waldo. And I realize the one problem with this lecture is that by the time I get to this point, I will lose half of your attention because everybody wants to find the freaking Waldo. Okay, so you probably will find it, and you'll get a chance to announce it a little later. But you can hopefully find Sam in that suit. There he is right there. Now, what I'd like to use is the information that we already have from Cam to help us do a better job finding Waldo. Because here's what Cam said. Sam, you're within 30 feet of Waldo almost the whole night. I'd say 80% of the time you were. Sam's got all of these freaking pictures. I'm sorry, Cam has all these pictures from the night. Right now, you're only looking at one of them. Here's my first question. Is it a guarantee that Waldo is within 30 feet of Sam?
No.
No. 80% of the time, Sam's within 30 feet of Waldo, which means 80% of the time, Waldo's within 30 feet of Sam. Just unmute your mics for a second. Is that perfectly clear to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a really simple idea, but it's the heart of confidence intervals. If I'm within 30 feet of you, you're within 30 feet of me. If I'm not within 30 feet of you, you're not within 30 feet of me. So what we can say is this. If what Cam said is true, and in 80% of our pictures, Waldo should be within 30 feet of Sam, what we could do is zoom in on Sam and draw a circle around him that has a radius of 30 feet. That's this big green disc here. We already said, we already asked, is it guaranteed that Waldo will be inside that ring?
No.
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 Is it likely?
Yes.
Yeah. How likely?
80% likely.
80%. 80% of the time, Waldo is within 30 feet of Sam, so if we draw a 30-foot circle around Sam, there's an 80% chance he's in there. The inside circle that you see, the red one, is the 20-foot circle. Remember that Sam said that he was inside that circle, that he was within 20 feet of Waldo 50% of the time. So what's the chance that Waldo's inside the red circle?
50%.
50%, sure.
50.
Yeah. Well, looking around, does it look like Waldo's actually inside those circles?
No.
No.
Did anybody find him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Near the shoe table.
Let's see. Right there? Near the shoe table. Right. Everybody see him? Does this mean that what Cam said was wrong?
No.
No. 20% of the time you'd expect Waldo to be outside of the circle. 80% of the time you'd expect him to be in it. This particular picture was taken in one of the 20% when Waldo wasn't inside his circle. Then Sam would move around the room, and 80% of the time he'd be standing somewhere where Waldo was inside his circle. Is this making sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, because believe it or not, what we just did is exactly what confidence intervals are about, and virtually everything that people get confused about can be avoided if we just take a second and talk about this example. I'm going to back up a couple frames here, because I've actually been telling a story about Sam and Cam, but there's a point to this entire thing, and here's what it is. Sam, actually, it's not really short for Samuel, it's short for sample mean. Okay, so when we take a new picture, we're basically taking a new sample, and where the guy in the ugly suit is standing, that's our sample mean. Okay, now in our normal problems, this all lives on a number line, so Sam could only move back and forth on the number line, and Waldo is somewhere on the number line. I've changed it into a three-dimensional picture because it's easier to imagine the same thing, but it's the same idea, being within 20 feet of Sam or 30 feet of Sam. So every time we take a new picture, we'll find a new location for Sam. Will the position of Waldo move? No, he's an inflatable doll. He's just standing there. He represents the population mean. Okay? Every time we take a new picture, we're going to get the same population mean. He's never moving. But here's the important part. We've been told that Sam tended to hang around Waldo in the same kind of way that the sample mean tends to hang around the population mean. So if we know where the population mean is, we know pretty close where the sample mean is likely to be. That was chapter 7. But now we're saying if we know where the sample mean is, then we know pretty close where the population mean is going to be. And that's what we're playing this time. That's what a confidence interval is. So by saying go from where Sam is and go out 30 feet and say Waldo should be inside there, that's the strategy that we're using. I'm going to stop sharing my desktop for a moment and see if that makes sense to you. Let's see as far as check marks and X's, whether or not that basic idea seems to be cool. Don't be shy if it doesn't make sense. Okay, it looks pretty good. Are there any questions on that discussion? I'd like to invite them. I'll go back and so you can see it. But please ask, let me know if there's any questions you have about what we've talked about so far. I'm going to assume that means it is so perfectly clear that you have no questions, rather than it's so mind-numbingly boring or so impossible to understand that you have no questions. I feel pretty good about it. So let's take a look and see what that means in terms of the terminology that we use when talking about confidence intervals. I'm going back to this picture that we were looking at, and here's the sample mean. That's what we call X bar normally, right? And if I move off from that, I can go out to a certain distance away, and my circle has a certain radius, like this, like this. Okay, so here's my radius for the 50% chance of catching Waldo, and here's my radius for the 80% chance of catching Waldo. Are you surprised that the 80% circle is bigger?
No.
No, it's obvious, right? If you want to have a bigger chance of catching Waldo, you have to make a bigger circle. How big would the circle have to be in order to have a 100% chance of catching Waldo?
The whole picture.
Perfect. It would have to be the entire picture. So the great thing about that is you could say, I'm sure that Waldo was in my circle. And the bad thing is you'd say, but that's bloody useless because that tells me nothing. What's the problem with making a really small circle around it? That'd be great. What's the bad thing about it?
It's not as likely that Waldo would be found in it.
Right. I could say there's a 10% chance that Waldo's within 2 feet of you. Well, fantastic, but 90% of the time that's going to be useless. So really big circles, good thing, catches Waldo a lot of times. Bad thing, doesn't tell you much. Small circles, good thing, tells you a lot if it's true. Bad thing, probably doesn't catch Waldo. So in real life, we tend to split the difference on this. We'd like something of saying, I'd like a 90% chance of catching Waldo, of catching the population mean. Or I'd like a 95% chance. Or I'd like a 99% chance. And these are called the 90% confidence intervals, the 95% confidence interval, or the 99% confidence interval. I'm going to go away from this picture again to see whether those ideas make sense to you so far. Can you give me a check or an X depending on whether they do or not? Yeah, if you clear it away and put it back in, I'll know that we weren't just left there. Okay, this is looking good. I'm happy. Good enough. I'm going to go back to the picture then. Okay, so how do we end up doing this stuff? Here's the basic idea that's going to come up. First of all, you're going to have to tell me where your sample mean is. Okay, you're going to get that from your data. Secondly, you're going to have to make it possible for me to compute what the margin of error is, how big that radius is. It's called the margin of error. Okay, how far out do I go from my sample? It's like a butterfly net. How far do I have to go from where my sample mean is in order to say this is where I think the population mean is? You have to tell me how confident you want to be that I have caught Waldo, like 80% here, and then I have to have a way of computing how big my margin of error should be, how big this radius is. That's the whole way that confidence intervals are done. Okay. Now, in every other chapter, except for every other chapter since chapter 6, every time you do a problem, I say draw a picture. In this chapter, it's a little different. There's only one reason we'll draw a picture, and it'll always be the same kind of picture. And other than that, we actually do calculations. So we've still got about 10 minutes here, and so we're going to take a look and see exactly how that would get done. So let me get rid of this picture, and we'll take a look. Okay, I think it's going to be actually easiest here if I keep sharing the desktop, share my desktop, and go